What a joy it is to be gathered again today as family, as friends, as followers of Jesus, taking one more step forward on this journey that we've begun together. Last Sunday we opened the door with a message called More Than Believers. We talked about the difference between believing in Jesus and following him. About the danger of reducing discipleship to a checklist. About how easy it is to settle into religious habits without spiritual transformation. We said something bold. Jesus didn't die to make us comfortable. He died to make us holy. Belief is where the journey begins, but it's not where it ends. Belief says, I accept the truth. Apprenticeship says, I will live the truth. And so today, we continue our path forward with part 2 of our series, Practicing the Way of Jesus. This morning's message is titled, Apprenticing Jesus. Because if we believe in him, and if that belief is real, it must lead somewhere. It must move, mature, multiply. It must shape not just our Sundays, but our souls. So here's the question. How do we actually learn to live like Jesus? Not just admire him, not just sing about him, not just learn facts or recite verses or agree with theology, but how do we walk in his way? How do we watch him, learn from him, reflect him? How do we apprentice under the master? That's where we're headed today. And listen, if last week challenged you, good, let it. But don't stop at conviction. Let it carry you to formation, because belief is the first step in a lifelong journey. But apprenticeship is the road we walk to become more than we currently are. More than believers. More than churchgoers. More than box checkers and sermon hearers, to become what we were always meant to be, like Jesus. So let's lean in. Let's go deeper. Let's apprentice the rabbi. So if we're going to talk about apprenticing Jesus, we need to be crystal clear on this one thing. What is an apprentice? Not just vaguely, not just dictionary level, but soul level, because this isn't a vocabulary lesson, it's a life-defining posture. When you hear the word apprentice, you might think of someone learning a trade, maybe a welder, maybe a woodworker, maybe a wide-eyed intern following a master chef around a hot kitchen, getting burned and blessed at the same time. An apprentice is someone who attaches their life to a teacher. Someone who learns by walking alongside. Someone who grows not just by instruction, but by imitation. Let me say that again. Apprenticeship isn't just about instruction, it's about imitation. An apprentice doesn't sit in a classroom and take notes. An apprentice gets their hands dirty, gets their feet moving, gets their minds rewired, gets their hearts realigned. And in the first century Jewish world, this was the heartbeat of discipleship. You didn't apply to a rabbi to audit his ideas. You left everything. Your boat, your business, your father's house, and you followed him. You studied his tone. You watched how he ate. You watched how he prayed, how he handled conflict, how he carried his joy, how he bore his sorrow. Ray Vanderlyn said it this way. A disciple is someone who wants to be what the rabbi is. That's more than admiration. That's replication. There's an old saying from that culture that says, "May you be covered in the dust of your rabbi." Why? Why would it say that? Because the goal was to walk so closely behind your teacher that the dust kicked up from his sandals would cling to your clothes. That's apprenticeship. Not watching from a distance, not dipping your toe in the water, not attending occasionally and calling it growth. It's full-bodied, wholehearted, no turning back, up close transformation. To apprentice under Jesus means this. You don't just want to learn what he taught. You want to become who he is. And that's the call today. Not just head knowledge, not just church membership, but transformed living, a life that looks more and more like his every step, every choice, every day. And church, that's what Jesus is calling us into. Not just to be believers, but to be apprentices. Not just to learn about him, but to walk so closely with him that we begin to live like him. So if we're going to apprentice under Jesus and not just believe in him, but become like him, we need to know where we are going. Apprenticeship has a direction. It has a trajectory. It has a goal. Actually, it has three. Every true apprentice of Jesus is aiming for these three things: to be with Jesus, 2, to become like Jesus, and 3, to do what Jesus did. Let's walk through each one of these slowly, intentionally, because this is the foundation we're going to build on, not just today, but in the coming weeks in every life group conversation that follows. So number 1, to be with Jesus. Now that might sound simple, maybe even soft, but let's not breeze past it, because the first goal of apprenticeship is not productivity, it's presence. The whole story of Scripture is about a God who wants to dwell with his people, to walk with them in the garden, to tabernacle among them in the wilderness, to come in flesh and blood as Jesus of Nazareth, to live among them, and now to live within them. Jesus didn't come to his disciples and say, "Come and do." He said, "Come and be." In Mark 3:14 it says, he appointed 12 that they might be with him. Before he ever sent them out to preach or cast out demons, he called them to simply be with him. This is our first call too, to be with him, to sit at his feet like Mary, to draw near like the beloved disciple John, to walk with him daily, not out of duty, but out of a deep, deep desire. But let's be honest, this doesn't come naturally in our world. We live in a culture of noise and hurry. Stillness and silence feel awkward. They feel wasteful. Productivity is our idol. Busyness is our badge of honor. But you cannot become like someone that you never spend time with. Apprenticeship begins with attention, with creating space in our lives to listen to the voice of Jesus, to notice his presence, to speak and to be spoken to. And here's the beautiful part. Jesus isn't hard to find. He isn't hiding behind a veil. He's inviting us daily, quietly, constantly to be with him. That's why in our life groups, we're not going to just talk about Jesus. We're going to practice being with him through prayer, through silence, through reflection, through scripture, through slowing down long enough to actually recognize his presence. That's the first goal, to be with Jesus. And number 2, to become like Jesus. The second goal of apprenticeship is this: transformation. We don't just want to hang out with Jesus, so we want to be shaped by him, to take on his character, to reflect his heart, to move through life as he would if he were in our shoes. Luke 6:40 says it plainly: the student is not above the teacher, but everyone who is fully trained will be like the teacher. That's the aim. Not just to believe what Jesus believed, not just to memorize what Jesus taught, but to be formed into someone who acts, reacts, loves, forgives, leads, and lives like he did. And this isn't instant. This is not microwave faith. This is a slow crock pot simmer. It's a day-by-day discipleship. It's the cumulative effect of thousands of small decisions made in the light of Jesus' grace. This is spiritual formation. Romans 8:29 says that we are being conformed into the image of his Son. The word conformed means pressure, molding, shaping. There's nothing casual about it. It's why the early Christians were called little Christs, because they looked like him. Not just in their theology, but in their temperaments, in their kindness, in their compassion, in their truth-telling, and in their courage. But here's the hard part. Here's the hard part. This kind of transformation requires unlearning. It requires surrender. It requires allowing the Spirit of God to challenge the parts of us that are resistant, defensive, distracted, or damaged. It's not about being perfect. It's about being pliable. It's not about proving ourselves. It's about positioning ourselves. And one of the best places to do that, life groups. Because transformation doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in community. When someone speaks truth and love, when someone prays for you in the waiting, when someone challenges your comfort zone or celebrates your courage. So if the first goal is presence, the second is formation. To become like Jesus, not just act Christian, but carry Christ. And then number 3, to do what Jesus did. And here's the third goal: participation. Jesus didn't call us to be consumers of his grace. He called us to be conduits of it. He didn't say, admire me. He said, follow me. John 14:12, Jesus says something that still stuns me every time I read it. Listen to this. Very truly I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these. Greater things than Jesus. Yes, because we're not just saved from something, we're saved for something. To heal, to teach, to serve, to love, to make peace, to lift burdens, to cast out fear, to feed the hungry, and to share the good news. We do what Jesus did. And don't miss this. Don't miss this. When Jesus sent out the disciples 2 by 2 in Luke 9, he didn't give them a manual. He gave them his authority. He gave them his power, and he gave them purpose. The same Spirit that lived in them lives in you this morning. And I know what some of you must be thinking. I am not qualified. Good. If you were in class this morning listening to John talk, you will see that neither were they. Neither were they. So it doesn't matter. They were fishermen, tax collectors, political radicals, doubters, deniers, and failures. But they were apprentices. Willing, teachable, available. And they showed up. And when you apprentice under Jesus, long enough, you start walking like him, talking like him, loving like him, and eventually you start doing what he did. That's the joy of participation. But here's where it gets real. You will not be able to do what Jesus did if you're constantly exhausted, anxious, distracted, or overwhelmed. Which is why apprenticeship to Jesus is not about adding more to your already full plate. It's about changing the plate. It's about trading in the chaos for the cadence of Christ. His words echo out in Matthew 11:28-30. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. My yoke is easy. My burden is light. That's not a metaphor for vacation. It's a rhythm for life. We're not trying to work harder. We're trying to walk smarter, in step with the Spirit, in community with one another, to be with Jesus, to become like Jesus, to do what Jesus did. That's apprenticeship, and that's the walk I'm inviting you to walk this morning. One step at a time. One practice at a time. One relationship at a time, together. Now you may be wondering, that sounds great. It really does. I've been walking this path. I've been a Christian for however many years, but how do I actually live that out that you're talking about this morning? Maybe you haven't quite figured that out. How do I apprentice under Jesus in the chaos of real life, with jobs and bills and diapers and deadlines and headaches and car repairs? Again, allow me to tell you how we're going to do it. And this is perhaps the most important point of this sermon. You must prepare and be prepared to do it together. We're relaunching our life groups. And this isn't just another ministry. This is our church's answer to the question, how do we learn to live like Jesus? Each month, our life group will focus on one rhythm of Jesus, one habit, one practice, one way of life that Jesus modeled, and we'll ask this: how can I bring this into my own life? And we won't do it alone. We'll do it with community, with conversation, with accountability, with encouragement. Some of these practices, solitude, silence, fasting, Sabbath, hospitality, generosity, they may challenge you, but others may come more naturally to you. But the goal isn't pressure, it's presence. The goal isn't to add more to your already overloaded life. The goal is to create a structure within which your life becomes more aligned with Jesus and less enslaved to the chaos of the world. And again, let's put those words of Jesus from Matthew 11:28 and 30 back up for you to read, to dwell on, to revel in, to take as a promise upon which you can stake your lives. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. We don't need more burdens. We need better rhythms. We need Jesus's rhythm, and that's what life groups are all about. So here's the invitation. Here's the ask. Sign up today. There are sign-up sheets on the table in the foyer. Every life group will begin meeting next Sunday on October 5th. That first meeting is important. It's your opportunity to have a voice in when and where your group will meet going forward. After that, each group will decide what day of the week, what time of the day, and what location works best. And if another group's rhythm fits your family better, no problem. We want this to work for you. So we want this to bless you. You go with where it leads you, where it fits best with you. Because these life groups are not about adding more pressure. They're about finding peace. They're not just about information, they're about transformation. So sign up, show up. Let's walk this out together. Church, this is it. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where belief becomes boldness, where Sunday morning turns into Monday movement. We weren't called to be fans of Jesus. We were called to follow him, not just to know his words, but to walk in his ways, not just to admire his life, but to apprentice under him until our lives have begun to look like his. And listen, this isn't a game. This isn't just about becoming a better person. This is about the very reason you exist. You were created in the image of God, redeemed by the blood of the Lamb, filled with the power of the Holy Spirit. You were made for more than drifting, more than dabbling, more than just getting by in life. You were made to walk with Jesus, to walk in him, to walk like him, to bring light to the darkness, to bring hope to despair, to bring love into a world that's forgotten what love even looks like. And I don't care where you've been or what you've done, Jesus still calls your name. Just like he did on the day by the Sea of Galilee. Just like he did to Matthew at the tax booth. Just like he did to the woman at the well. Just like he did to Saul on the road to Damascus. He's calling now. Not when life gets easier. Not when schedules clear up. Not when you've cleaned yourself up or gotten your act together. Now. So the question today is not, do you believe? It's, will you follow? Will you apprentice under Jesus, not just in theory, but in truth? Will you be with him, become like him, do what he did, because that's the way, that's the walk, that's the life. It's not easy. It's not easy. It's so so beautiful. It's not always safe, but it's sacred. And it's not a solo journey, but it is your choice. So take a step today. Say yes. Say now. Say, Jesus, I'm ready. And don't just believe. Begin to follow. Here are your 3 questions today. Who have you fed this week? Who have you clothed? Who have you loved with the love of Jesus Christ? Where and how have you demonstrated the rabbi that you follow this week? Be blessed and be a blessing to others.